What's going on, Bills fans? The red and blue scrimmage is in the books, and we are here to talk about it with you, what our impressions were, get into all things Bills training camp tonight on Bills Chat Live. I am Josh McCarty. With me, as always, is Luka. Luka, how are you doing on this Football Friday?
Are we not talking about how the Pac-12 is being exploded right now? No, I'm just kidding. I'm doing good. It's a fun Friday. Obviously, we got a fun little discussion to be had when it comes to the red and blue scrimmage and everything that goes with that. It just basically ended. So exciting times right now for Bills Chat Live and everything, and I'm ready to kind of get right into it.
Yeah, it was a good practice, and we have our friend from Built in Buffalo, Ben Shoop, is going to be joining us in a few minutes. He was on hand at Highmark Stadium for the practice. He has some key takeaways. He's going to join us and let us know what his biggest impressions were of this Bills scrimmage of 2023. But Luca, let's get into some of the high notes first. I think the biggest concern most of us had coming into tonight was the status of right tackle Spencer Brown, because Joe Marino from Locked On Bills reported on Thursday that Spencer Brown looked like he was really favoring his back to in practice. And somebody that's had a history of back injuries, that just makes you super nervous. But he was fully padded tonight. He was full go at Bills practice. And while I understand, Luca, that a lot of us are still questioning whether Spencer Brown is the guy at right tackle, that does not mean that we want to see him go away, because if he's the starter, the backups are probably worse.
Yeah, well said at the end there. It's like,
Yeah.
look, you and I may have wanted a little bit more of a competition when it comes to that right tackle position. It is what it is at this point in the preseason and whatnot. So going into it, it's like, okay, so they're just leaning into, we even talked about it, I believe, on our podcast episode, where it's like they want to comfort him. They want him to feel easy about his job and hopefully develop from there. You can't be dealing with an injury after that point. That can be kind of cataclysmic to that position. And eventually the dominoes fall when it comes to the offensive line, where now you're starting to piece things together with either a depth right tackle piece or shifting other pieces around to accommodate for it, whatever it might be. So yeah, it was good to see that it wasn't a massive issue. He was back out there after a little bit of a scare. So all things are hopefully avoided when it comes to that injury scare for now.
Yeah, because Tommy Doyle has not had a good camp. We kind of saw what David Quessenberry was last year, and Brandon Shell was the veteran insurance they brought in. Did not have a great year for Miami last year, much more of a run blocking tackle. So keeping Spencer Brown healthy is very important. Other development tonight, Matt Milano and Taron Johnson both sat out of practice. General soreness was the term they used to describe that. Luca, to me, this is nothing to freak out about. This is very simply, it is August 4th, and if they are not at 100%, maybe even 110%, there's no reason to put those guys out there.
Yeah, maybe in a current, a recent practice, they took a helmet somewhere where it was a little uncomfortable, had a stinger somewhere, and it's basically a glorified vet rest. It's something where, hey, we're not going to risk it. Even if they're at 95%, that's not 100%, like you just said there. Let's just kind of take it easy. They're too vital to this team. Let them rest. Let them kind of just relax and enjoy everything that is going on in front of them. They'll be back eventually. It's nothing of a serious concern. It's man management. It's just plain and simple man management, and nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
And it gives other guys a chance to shine, see what they do out there with the ones. What do you do in an environment where you're playing in the actual stadium you're going to be in on game day in front of crazy fans who are just absolutely thirsty for NFL football based on the entire lower bowl being filled? Can't wait to hear Ben's thoughts on what that environment was like too, and we bring him up here in a few minutes. All right, the last topic we want to get into, Luca, and our guy Billy Williams hit the nail on the head. Blue helmet gate. Second year in a row, Josh Allen has come out at the red and blue scrimmage with a different colored helmet than the rest of the team. This time around, it was the blue helmet. And if you pay attention to Bill's Twitter, you know that as all these teams around the league are unleashing their throwback uniforms, there is a, where's the red helmets? Well, Josh Allen comes out in a blue helmet. I'm afraid to admit this, Luca. I thought it looked good.
Oh, I actually, hot take whether it is or not, I think I like the blue helmet better than the red helmet personally. I think the blue is just clean. It's got a real, just kind of icy look to it. The red is kind of the thing we already have seen in a variation of. We saw kind of a more modern take on it when Josh Allen came out with it last year. This blue one was unique. It was different. As I said, icy clean, very smooth. Yeah, honestly, that paired with the more warm red visor that he still had with it, a very, very nice look. Naturally, though, He had to take it off when the scrimmage actually got going. He put his normal helmet on, probably for safety reasons and everything like that. Maybe that helmet isn't actually certified to be kind of in any sort of contact. It's more of a show pony of a helmet, we'll call it, but it looked very, very, very nice.
We have a packed house tonight. We appreciate all of you choosing to spend your Friday night with us and the Built-in Buffalo team. If you are watching on YouTube, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps out Built-in Buffalo so much as we are trying to become your one-stop shop for all Buffalo Bills content, and we would really, really appreciate it. We have so much to get into tonight, Luka. Want to have a Trent Sherfield conversation. Want to talk about the middle linebacker battle. I think we've gotten some clarity on that this week, and we certainly want to get into that. Want to talk about the offensive line depth, and I want to have a Taylor Rapp conversation, Luka, because I think this is going to be one of those off-season signings that when it happened, we we're like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then as the season goes on, we are going to be like, oh, wow, Taylor Rapp is a very important player on this defense. But Luka, let's not waste any more time. Let's bring in our friend Benjamin Shoop from Built-in Buffalo. He was on hand tonight at the Red and Blue scrimmage. We want to get his takeaways. Benjamin, how you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us. We know you got some plans this weekend, but sacrificing a little bit of your Friday evening to hop on with us and let us know, we certainly appreciate that. So open-ended question, Benjamin, take it whatever way you want. Walking out of Highmark Stadium tonight, what was on your mind regarding these Buffalo Bills?
I mean, there was a lot, right? I mean, you got to see a lot of different things, a lot of different looks with the offense and the defense. But the number one thing that honestly stood out to me was the mix of different players, just putting them out wide, putting them inside, seeing Hardy outside, seeing Sherfield outside, seeing both inside, seeing all the movement with all of the different weapons they have on that offense. That was number one thing for me that stood out, was just seeing everybody kind of getting in their roles, but there's not really set roles, it looks like, for everybody. Maybe the only one might be Hardy, might be that gadget guy that kind of moves around the field everywhere. But just seeing everybody and all these playmakers do what they can do, it really just is something that I think Josh Allen's going to love, and I think Bills Mafia is going to love.
I like the point you make about the movement, because it seems like tonight was a strong night for Ken Dorsey. There was a red zone period where there was some movement that got Trent Sherfield open for a touchdown, and there was also some pre-snap movement that got Khalil Shakir open for a touchdown. Luka, I want to have a Trent Sherfield conversation. Benjamin, obviously, I see this in your post-practice notes. Follow Ben on Twitter, by the way. Shoop Ben, ShoopBen. Great Bills Twitter contributor here. The first note he makes, Luka, is about Trent Sherfield. And this is a guy that I know you've been a fan of since the Bills signed him. And I know you and I are in agreement on what his role could be this year.
Whoop, just realized I was muted. Yeah, no, Trent Sherfield is a fascinating receiver to me. And when the signing happened immediately, he's kind of like that receiver to me in my fandom and just the NFL understanding I have that just never goes away. He opens up his career with the Cardinals. He goes to the Niners. He goes to the Dolphins. Now he finds himself with the Bills. And the interesting tidbit here with him is this might actually be one of his first legitimate chances to crack a top 3 at the wide receiver position in the receiver room that he finds himself in. When you look back at his career, 2018 is rookie year, Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, and J.J. Nelson are in front of him. J.J. Nelson gets the edge just because he had absolute elite speed at the time and was serviceable there. 2019, Larry Fitzgerald, Michael Crabtree, Christian Kirk. 2020, Larry Fitzgerald, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk. Probably the best receiver room he's been in his entire career when it comes to just historically what they've done. 2021, he makes the move to San Fran, tries to figure it out there. Unfortunately, a rookie Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel are there in front of him. He's not cracking that, and they don't go 3 wide very often. 2022, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Cedric Wilson Jr. Those are all receiver rooms that even at the skill set of Trent Sherfield, unfortunately, he's not breaking through. Those are all very proven receivers at very high-end skill level. This receiver room, you do have Gabe Davis in front of him and everything like that, but at the slot position at wide receiver 3, there is clearly an open competition. And Trent Sherfield is kind of, as Ben even says, is making a huge case to win that position and win that spot on this roster. And he just continues to grasp at that opportunity. And maybe he's just kind of that fine wine among the NFL where it's taken him a few years. He's learned a lot from a lot of those legendary names he's been behind. And then he's going to finally find his position in his spot with the Bills going forward because, yeah, everything is positive when it comes to Trent Sherfield. And I like him personally. When he was with those Cardinals teams, and I would watch him a little bit more closely then, when he'd come in those sub packages and whatever else was going on, he always excelled. It's just, you're not going to get regular playing time when you have future Hall of Famer Larry Fitzgerald, you have potential future Hall of Famer DeAndre Hopkins in front of you, so on and so forth. Like those are just too good of receivers to keep on the sideline for a Trent Sherfield. So it just is what it is. I'm excited for him. I'm excited for him to possibly grasp at this opportunity that is wide receiver 3 for the Bills.
He has inside-outside flexibility, which is not something a lot of the Bills wide receiver room had last year. He's one of the best run-blocking wide receivers in the sport. So him and Gabe Davis can be really fun in some of those 4-minute situations. And Ben, one of your notes here is about making the case for wide receiver 3. And that's interesting because I'm of the belief that if the Bills had it their way, Khalil Shakir would be the wide receiver 3. It seems like he's kind of first in line for those drills, but I think he's had a little bit of an inconsistent camp. Maybe a couple too many drops for my liking. And then the other name we hear about is Deontay Hardy. He certainly signed a bigger deal than Sherfield, but now that he might be called into duty for that punt return gig, maybe more of a gadget guy. What is it about Sherfield, either tonight or in general, that has impressed you?
I think it's just, and it's going to sound kind of cliche, but it's the energy that he brings. It's just, you see it on the field. You can feel it as a fan just in the stands. And I mean, Luka alluded to it a little bit, is he never really had the chance to get a wide receiver 3 spot, especially last year. A lot of Dolphins fans did not expect him to even really make the roster. And he ended up, doing pretty well, making the roster, doing pretty well for himself behind Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Wilson and everything. So now you're like he said, he's starting to get into it, starting to really prove that he can be a wide receiver 3, go inside, go outside. And it's just, he can do a little bit of everything. He can do anything you ask him to do. If you ask him to line up outside, he can do it. If you ask him to line up inside in the slot, he can do it. If you want him just to be a blocker, he can do it. So he can do a little bit of everything. And I think just the versatility of him sets him apart from Hardy or Shakir. And what you said with Shakir is that kind of shocked me today as well, is seeing Shakir in with the ones as much as we did. He started off the practice with the ones. You saw him a lot with Allen out there. And like you said, he kind of hasn't really had the greatest camp so far, especially compared to Sherfield or Hardy. So just looking at all 3 of these guys, it's just Sherfield has just the most versatility, and that's really setting him apart, because you're seeing with Hardy, maybe not as much Hardy as we would have expected right when you saw the signing, but it's because Sherfield's having such a good camp.
I really do think this wide receiver 3 spot could end up being a paint by numbers committee situation. And quite honestly, it might all be somewhat irrelevant anyway, with how much I expect Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox to be on the field at the same time. But I'm with you. I think Sherfield has a chance to be a very important player on this team. The most important player on any football team, if one injury happens, is the backup quarterback. And I think one of your interesting takeaways from this practice, Ben, is Kyle Allen and Matt Barkley are both taking a lot of reps at quarterback too. And I think our default setting as Bills fans, because of what happened last year with Case Keenum, is just, oh, well, Matt Barkley's the quarterback 3. Whatever veteran with starting experience they bring in is the de facto quarterback 2. But people, if you look under the hood of the Kyle Allen contract, it was essentially a league minimum contract. He does not outrank Matt Barkley as far as contract goes. And if you want to talk about familiarity with the system, Matt Barkley has a leg up there. So just in general, what are your thoughts about how the quarterbacks performed tonight? And do you think this really is a race for QB2?
Yeah, I mean, it really, to me, doesn't seem like the Bills know specifically yet who they want as their backup quarterback. And tonight, I think you saw the leadership of Matt Barkley, just seeing the experience from him tonight, where with Allen, it's more, he has more mobility than Barkley has. He might be able to, do stuff that Barkley just simply can't at his age and just with his skill set. So I think it's going to be something that we don't see till even the end of training camp, the end of preseason, that we know who's going to be that backup, because it just doesn't, like you said, Barkley's got the familiarity with the Bills. Allen might have the youth, not by a ton, but he's got the youth compared to Barkley. And it just doesn't seem like they are super set on having Kyle Allen. I've even talked a little bit with people about, Teddy Bridgewater's still a free agent, but it seems like they're pretty set on one of these 2 guys. But yeah, it just seems like they don't really know specifically yet who's going to be that backup quarterback behind Josh.
Luka, the knock on Kyle Allen is he's slow to release the ball. And if you're Josh Allen, if you're a Madden created 99 everything player, you can be slow to release the ball and just backdrop the linebacker that come at you and go about your business. But with the state of this offensive line, Matt Barkley, for all of his flaws as a journeyman quarterback, he has a quick release. He gets rid of the ball quick. It's 3 steps and it's out. He knows where he's going with the ball. And there's a part of me that can see that if I need a quarterback to come in just to play a couple games to keep the season on the rails, it's important to understand what we're talking about here. If Josh Allen is out for the season, none of this matters. Just hope they lose enough games to get Marvin Harrison Jr. But if it's going to be 2 or 3 games, I think, Luka, there's a chance that Matt Barkley is the guy that in this system with this team, with the surrounding cast, could give them the best shot to stay on the rails.
Yeah, I do believe you have a case there when it comes to Matt Barkley being the more efficient backup than Kyle Allen, just simply because it pains me to talk this positive about a USC quarterback, even though he is far separated from USC, but I will do so. And it's like, look, in this offense, if Josh Allen goes down, it's still built where kind of you have to get the ball out quick and in a tight window. That is the passing game that this offense is. If you have a long release, if you have more time for defensive backs in coverage to attack whatever it is you are looking at down the field, that is a problem. It's built around the strength that is Josh Allen and his arm strength, of course. So I would rather a quarterback who maybe you have to not lengthen the field as much anymore, but still hit those tight windows at more opportune moments like a Matt Barkley can do and operate, than a Kyle Allen who can move around and make things happen, but he's giving more time and opportunity for the coverage to whatever close down anything that's down the field or whatever. And you've seen it in his career where that seems to be the case. There's a lot of inconsistency. There's a lot of windows that close on him just because simply he has that long release, not getting the ball out quick enough to wherever he's trying to inevitably get it to. So it's not ultimately surprising. At the same time, Kyle Allen was simply brought in my mind, because he is buddies with Josh Allen. It's no secret. Everyone knows it. And I'm sure Josh Allen really would love it if he can win that position, but the Bills ultimately have to do what's best for them. And it's not like he doesn't get along with Matt Barkley. He is, of course, friends with Matt Barkley as well. So I'm curious to see how it breaks down. I do think, as Ben even kind of pointed out, this could be something that we see go all the way through preseason games. And until roster cut down, it's really going to be kind of a coin flip and a toss up. And I could, early on, I could see it going either way. I could understand them going with either option realistically, but it's definitely kind of low key going to be a very fascinating position battle, even though, as you also pointed out, Josh Allen goes down and these guys have to play meaningful games. It's not like we're looking at hopefully for them to sustain high-end caliber offense. We just need you to keep the boat afloat, and hopefully Allen can come back when the games really get ramped up. If not, it's all lost anyways.
I think there's a chance that Kyle Allen is their future Matt Barkley, where he is the guy that for the next 10 years or probably 5 years is the quarterback 3, and the veteran they bring in free agency is the quarterback 2. All right, Ben, you had a long list of takeaways and notes. Where do you want to go next? What else stood out to you at practice? What was the next biggest takeaway in your mind from the red and blue scrimmage?
One thing that stood out to me, not even before this red and blue scrimmage, and then even more so into the scrimmage, was the use of Reggie Gilliam. Before the season, or in the beginning of the offseason, if you would have told me, like after they draft Kincaid, that Quentin Morris might be on the inside or outside looking in, I would have said yeah. And now it's even more so, because I'm feeling like Reggie Gilliam could be used in multitude of ways. He might even be that third tight end that they had. They had him on the line a lot. I've seen him even when they were over at St. John Fisher, a lot of times where he was off the line of scrimmage, out wide a little bit, and they have him using him that way. So they've been using him in a lot of different ways. They've been sending him downfield. They've been dumping it off to him, and he had about 4 or 5 catches today. So it just, for me, that's the interesting part of seeing Reggie Gilliam's use, saying, is that going to now take opportunity away from Quentin Morris to make the roster? And are they going to move him to a fullback / tight end, kind of just using him in a multitude of ways? So for me, yeah, Reggie Gilliam was the number one that stood out to me, and just seeing him get more involved necessarily. And I've heard it before, and it's something that, a lot of people are talking about, is the Bills are kind of moving towards this positionless offense where it's, you have a guy, yeah, like Kincaid, who's a tight end, but is he really a tight end? He's not a full tight end. A guy like Gilliam, he's a fullback, but just because that's his label doesn't mean he's going to be used like that. And you're going to see it with everybody, I think. And Reggie is one that really stood out to me in his usage a lot in the passing game.
We heard a lot about 13 personnel tonight, which one running back, 3 tight ends. So if you think about that, Kincaid, Knox, and Gilliam being listed as a tight end, that is where he's done the majority of his work at training camp this offseason. You think about they come out in empty, and the defense pre-huddle has to figure out, how am I going to match up with 13 personnel? You probably want to go heavy, maybe even 3 safeties, 3 linebackers. But they could also reduce down and have Kincaid and Diggs outside. Reggie Gilliam, can be just fine at fullback. And then James Cook, who could either line up out wide, or there's your tailback dotting the I. There's so much versatility there. And Luka, I think we saw that in practice tonight, because the first play in a team period out of the Bills' end zone was a 45-yard run by James Cook out of 13 personnel. And the bind that puts a defense in when you have guys like Dalton Kincaid, I'm going to include Dawson Knox in this, tight ends that you have to make a choice. Are you going to match up with a linebacker and take your medicine in the passing game, or match up with a DB and take your medicine in the running game? It is just the ultimate cheat code as far as running offensive football.
Ben said it well. I mean, and we've kind of been talking that same thing, positionless. They seem to be having this whole thing where you want more and more individuals on the field that are positionless. Even Josh Allen in his own right, of course he's the quarterback, but he realistically is a better running back than half the running backs in the league. He even has versatility to himself. Stephon Diggs, yes, he's the number 1 wide receiver, but he can be used in kind of the run game if you really need to, on sweeps, jets, everything like that. You need the versatility of anyone could do anything at any point in time if they're on the field. The only 5 individuals who are probably doing one job and one job only are the 5 offensive linemen, tackle to tackle. They're doing their job. They just need to do those jobs at a high end. Everyone else needs to have that ability, where then, as you're putting it, the defense and the defensive coordinator needs to make a decision on who they're putting out on the field and what they're trying to address, so that we can then counter that and do whatever puts our offense in the best position to be successful. And that's a beautiful thing when you have Knox, Kincaid. We can even put Gilliam in this conversation because he does have versatility. It's not the same sexiness, we'll call it, as a Kincaid or a Knox, but it's still versatility in its own right. And then you have James Cook dotting the I, going wide, doing whatever he needs to do as well. It's a beautiful thing. And yeah, you want to be able to kind of make sure you're always a step ahead of the defense, and just having that unknown and that cloud hanging over the defensive coordinator and the defense's head is a beautiful thing to have, to kind of keep that foot forward and in front of them, so that they just don't know what to do. And you always have kind of that counter punch in your bag just in case they catch up to you.
And you mentioned, Ben, about maybe Quentin Morris being on the outside looking in. I am always up for a 53-man roster conversation. I understand we haven't even had a preseason game yet, but sometimes before I even fall asleep at night, I'll just start going through the positions, like, oh, Jay Sternberger's out, or oh, AJ Klein practice squad. But I think if I had to predict today, I think Gilliam is a lock, like lock city. He does so much for this team, special teamer. He's their only fullback. He's tight end, just game day active. He's here. I would say Quentin Morris probably still makes the squad because of the emphasis I think they're going to put on these 2 tight end looks. I think you want to make sure you have Quentin Morris in house. I think there's been a lot of conversation about, could Jay Sternberger take Quentin Morris's spot as that 4th tight end? And I have my doubts about that. And if for no other reason, the fact that nobody else in the league seemed to be in a hurry to sign Jay Sternberger, I find it hard to believe that if the Bills were to release him on roster cutdown day, that he wouldn't clear waivers and make it to their practice squad. We're going to talk about other things here, but since you brought it up, I'll give you the last chance to talk about anything I just mentioned. Gilliam, the tight end situation, anything you want there, Ben.
Yeah, I will say, when it comes to Sternberger versus Morris, if it's down to those 2, I would say Morris. You even saw it tonight. You saw Morris get involved a little bit with the offense, have a couple catches here and there. Sternberger, you saw a little bit actually in the backfield, a little bit when they had Allen drop back, and they had Cook on one, or not Cook, Harris on one side, Sternberger on the other. So you did see him, but you felt Morris more tonight, and I think you'll see that in the preseason games and down the road. I just think Morris brings a little bit more to the table, and I think, kind of like what you said with Barkley, he knows the system already. He's been on the team for a little bit. He's kind of got, a little bit of connection with Allen over Sternberger. So yeah, out of those 2, I would definitely say that Morris has the upper hand. But it will definitely be a battle for either of those 2 to make the roster and be an impactful player on this offense.
Well, speaking of this offense, we can be super excited about how good Dalton Kincaid looks, what the prospects of this 12 personnel is. Stephon Diggs obviously looks fantastic. Luka and I are going to talk about Gabe Davis here later on in the show, but all three of us know, everybody in chat knows, none of it matters if the offensive line is bad. And I don't think the offensive line was bad last year. I think it was average to below average. But one of your notes in your practice recap, Ben, was offensive line depth could be an issue. So just tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, so the first team offensive line, they look good today. They held up pretty well. But once you saw the second and third teams out there, it was rough. The defensive line was blowing it up quick. Every run play, it just seemed like running back gets the ball, boom, they're getting hit, or they're getting their own offensive lineman pushed back into them. So it was really a struggle for them to get going today, to hold up, even when Kyle Allen and Barkley were dropping back to pass. You had to see them get out of the pocket a little bit more. You had to see a little bit more movement from them and a little more awareness to get the ball out, because the offensive line was just struggling, and more so the interior offensive line, more so David Edwards, and even Ryan Bates was playing backup or center number 2. He didn't have a horrible day, but it struggled as a whole. And I think if a Spencer Brown goes down, or if, God forbid, Deion Dawkins goes down, I think tackle's the one that we are really in trouble for. The Bills really need to maybe find another piece, maybe on cheap. But for right now, if they kept it how it is and one of those two goes down, it might be a long season for that offensive line, and a lot of edge rushers might be licking their lips looking at it. So that's really what stood out, is just the first and second team really struggled against the first and second team defensive line. It's not like they were going up against, Ed and all of them. They were going up against the second, third team as well, and they were struggling. So hopefully there's no injuries this year for them, but if there is, Brandon Beane will have his work cut out for him. Seeing what we saw and seeing that it probably won't work out too well for Allen dropping back with those tackles.
Luka and I even talked about it during draft season. The reason why you see so many tackles go in the first and second round over their draft projection is because they are just so hard to find. They don't grow on trees. Every given week, there are 64 players that start at offensive tackle in the NFL, and there are not 64 qualified human beings in this world to play NFL offensive tackle. So it is a thin position league wide. And, as far as the Bills go, I think coming into this season with the lack of what they did in free agency, you're hoping for a leap for somebody like Tommy Doyle. That certainly has not transpired to this point in camp. It seems like he's really struggling to come back from his ACL injury. Certainly hoping for a leap from Spencer Brown on the starting unit. And maybe they find something with Brandon Shell, who they got from the Miami Dolphins. But I'm with you. I'm concerned about the offensive line. And I will tell you, Luka, hearing Ben talk about David Edwards and Ryan Bates being part of the issue does not make me happy, because but if Osiris Torrance wins the right guard job, those would be the two backups you feel best about, David Edwards and Ryan Bates. And hearing those guys struggling, maybe the best way for all of us to go to sleep tonight is we just convince ourselves that the Bills have the best backup defensive lineman in the league.
I'm going to spin this positively because I want to be the positive influence here. Depth offensive line, just like a backup quarterback, is that insurance policy that you absolutely do not want to utilize in any capacity. You will happily pay for that insurance to sit on your bench and I'm not calling them useless because they're productive and, every day to day in practices, whatnot, but useless on game days. You want them doing absolutely nothing or as minimal as possible on game days. If you have to dip into that insurance policy, if you have to keep using those things throughout the season, you're probably in bigger trouble than it already is. That's how I positively look at this. But yeah, you would like to have a couple good things sitting there behind just in case. Injuries do happen, of course. No one is healthy by the season's end. You want Bates, you want these other guys to have the ability to kind of, once we need them, they can step up and at least be serviceable. If they're not that, it could be a little ugly. Well, what's different about that? That's always been the case when it comes to this team the past few years, and they still have 2 13-win seasons in their past 3 years. I mean, I'm not saying that's a good thing. Those two things aren't correlating at all, but it's like, hey, we still have a team that can hopefully manage that, get around it, make the best that they can. It's just you want them to then still come back and be healthy come playoffs. So if they're a little bit more cautious with an early injury to whoever it is on the offensive line, that they can then be, as close to 100% come December, January, and going into hopefully a game in February where everything's good and dandy. So I'll just be positive about it. I'm not going to get all, in a tizzy over it, because as you also brought up in my last point too, you want to try to bring someone else in if you can and improve the team at that position. There's not a whole heck of a lot out there. There's no answers when it comes to the free agent market for that matter. I think the only left tackle that I can even think of that isn't over the age of 40, because that's Jason Peters, that's still on the free agent market right now, is Eric Fisher. And I don't think he saw a single snap last year, and he is basically retired at this point. So there's nothing really there when it comes to a premier tackle experience guy out there. It just is what it is. So you're going to kind of have to live with what you have in the depth, and hopefully they figure it out. It is only August 4th. We don't even kick a meaningful game of football for over a month still. They have time to figure things out and kind of grow back into their shoes.
How dare you? That Colts-Bills game is incredibly meaningful, Luka. Preseason slander will not be taken on this show. Ben, we're going to get you out here in another couple minutes here. I know you got to get going. I actually wanted to get into Joey's question here about Deion Dawkins. He mentions Deion Dawkins has been getting beat on speed move. Is that something to worry about? I'll be honest, Joey, I'm a little worried about it. Not a lot worried about it. It's preseason, it's training camp. And there was even a rep against Gregory Rousseau where Deion Dawkins, to the untrained eye, to everybody watching, got beat. And then he had a press conference media session later that day, and he talked through, and he said, I even pulled Greg Rousseau aside, like, hey, you're trying to be like Von Miller where you go low to get around me. He's like, I could have planted you in the ground. I just didn't want to injure one of our most important defensive players. So I'll take the L on the practice field. And we have to keep all of that in mind. Like, these guys are all working on things on the practice field. We're so thirsty for football information. We're taking all these things in a practice setting to heart. But I'd say I'm a little concerned. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say it's a 2 or a 3. Dawkins did not have his best season last year. I think the inconsistencies at left guard with Roger Saffold played into that quite a bit. Josh Allen's injury probably didn't help with that, quite honestly. I'm expecting Deion Dawkins to be an above average offensive tackle that he has been in the league. He's not great. He's good. He's good enough. And I would expect him to be that. But Ben, I know you got to get out of here. I want to give you a final chance. Anything else on your mind? Anything you want to talk about regarding these Buffalo Bills and the scrimmage tonight?
I will say one more thing though on the offensive line. I do think with Bates, the one thing tonight that you saw was just, it was collapsing everywhere on the offensive line, which in turn you could see kind of him just going everywhere trying to fix everything. So that I will give Bates the benefit of the doubt, because it just, as soon as it was snapped, pocket collapsing, and it was just, it was kind of rough. But again, like you said, the Bills do have great depth at defensive line. So maybe it is just that the defensive line is that much better. So I'm not going to say too much about the offensive line anymore, but it's definitely a little concern. When it comes to Dawkins, I'm kind of with you though, Josh, on that. I'm not too concerned about it. It's, we're still August 4th. There's still a lot of preseason left, and we've seen guys struggle early on before. But the last note that I will end on is about Khalil Shakir. I said it a little bit earlier. I was shocked that he was with the ones. He had his drop issues, but I do think when it comes to Shakir's role in this offense, I think you'll see him kind of used similarly to how you saw Isaiah McKenzie used towards the end of the season. You won't see him too much. You'll see him when they feel like, okay, we can mix it up a little bit. But I feel like just compared to Hardy, compared to Sherfield, I think those two just have the upper hand right now. They have the experience, and just with all the drops, that's the main issue with this offense. I mean, you've seen it with Gabe Davis. You saw it with Knox a little bit early in his career. You've seen it, around a little bit. So I think they're going to go with, the guys that might be a little more sure-handed over Shakir, where he's kind of struggled in that aspect. And he did actually muff his first punt today, which was kind of rough on his part. So I don't know if you'll see him either and back to return. Hope he can maybe clean it up in the preseason towards the end of the training camp. But it's been an up and down training camp for him so far.
Yeah, it indeed has. And, second-year player, I think a lot of us are excited about that pick when it was made, because he's a fifth-round guy that we were watching mock drafts. He was going in the late second, early third round, and your brain is like, oh, we got a value. But there's a guy behind him, Justin Shorter, that I think is going to be a problem in the future. He has size you cannot teach. He's got aggression. He is a four-phase special teamer right out of the box in the NFL. I don't think he's going away either. So I'm with you. I don't think that I'm ready to just assume that Khalil Shakir is going to be the wide receiver 3 and everybody else just watches him play. Ben, thank you so much for hopping on tonight. We know you have some plans going on this weekend. Thanks for letting us know everything you saw at camp. Let everybody know what you got going on Built in Buffalo and where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me. My Twitter's @ShoopBen. I mainly use Twitter out of all the social medias, but I'm going to be starting up some articles there. So if you want to read some articles, you can check me out there, as well as I do a podcast every week with my co-host Hunter Lober Cummins, where it's Buffalo Sports Banter. First half of the show, we talk current Buffalo sports, whether it's Bandits, Bills, UB Bulls, Sabres, down the line. You go down the line, name it. And then actually the last usually 10 minutes, we talk a little history of Buffalo sports.
Ooh.
So if you want to learn some history of Buffalo sports, get some cool facts about it, come join us. It's always fun. And just excited to get the season going. And thank you guys for having me on again. It was been a pleasure. And so there's where you guys can find me.
All right, Ben. Thanks again. Safe travels this weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Luka, I want to pick up on the wide receiver conversation because one of the major talking points on this team last year was Gabe Davis. And coming into the year last year, the Bills had very high expectations for both Gabe Davis and Isaiah McKenzie. And I think for all of the offensive woes we saw, the two biggest sticking points were the perceived underperformance of Gabe Davis and Isaiah McKenzie in the elevated roles the Bills had put them in. Isaiah McKenzie's obviously gone. Gabe Davis had the high ankle sprain week 2, missed the Titans game, says that injury lingered with him the rest of the season. And he and Ken Dorsey have both brought up in press conference settings that they think there's more meat on the bone. He's been a high ADOT player, a down the field receiver, and that can affect things like your catch percentage, and that he can be more of that intermediate route runner. You and I both have our doubts because the skill set he has may not lend itself to being that consistent underneath route runner. And they obviously now have Kincaid and Knox to kind of eat up some of that stuff too. But the guys at camp and the guys whose eyes I trust have been noticing a new looking Gabe Davis, a more focused Gabe Davis. It could be as simple as he's going into a contract year. He's a human being and he sees a payday on the other side of the rainbow. That's human nature. That is not a knock. But man, if Gabe Davis can develop his underneath intermediate route running, I'm not asking him to be Cole Beasley. I'm not asking him to be Jackson Smith and Jigba. But if he can just be baseline good with his ability to get deep on a defense, what a weapon he could wind up being. And he could be that number 2 wide receiver we were hoping for last year.
Absolutely. We need him to just refine the skills that he already had and elevate them a little bit more while also adding to his toolbox, while making sure in that toolbox is not like the toolbox you had when you moved into your first apartment. It's a hammer, maybe a level in there, and that's about it. You need more than just a couple items to get things done around the household, get things done on the field. I know you like that analogy there, Josh. So it's like, yeah, we just need him to add more to his bag. Like, be more of a complete receiver. I know it feels like Bean and McDermott and these guys, they like to reward the kind of in-home talent as long as it's not egregious when it comes to the dollar amount they're asking for. That's unfortunately what probably saw Tremaine Edmonds go. But if Gabe Davis can finally turn it on and they see the success and the build upon what he's already provided them in the past, he could be an extremely useful wide receiver too for this offense. Of course, he can be that thing potentially that we kind of wanted him to be and projected him to be last season. And then potentially he could be rewarded on top of it by McDermott or just by the open market if he is, kind of valued at a very high dollar amount, which he ultimately could be. He has size, he has downfield speed, he has a lot of the intangibles you want in a receiver. He's young, where he can still kind of give you even more. It's just, can he put it all together this season? Can he kind of produce and make it all happen and have a lot of versatility? There's that word again in this offense, and expand on the skill set he already has so that he can be more of a complete weapon down the field opposite of Diggs.
I want to get into a Taylor Rapp conversation, but while we're on Gabe Davis, let's zoom out a little bit and have a quick big picture conversation, because we saw last year a player maybe with a similar trajectory on defense, a better overall player to this point in his career, Tremaine Edmonds, where he was good but kind of left you wanting more, and the Bills let it play into his 5th and final year of his contract, and boy, did he explode, and he set the market, and he was gone. One thing the Bills could do now with Gabe Davis is if they believe he's going to explode, and let's be honest, the Bills are going to throw the ball 600 times. Stephon Diggs is going to get his 100, 110 receptions, but there are a lot of targets to go around. And if Gabe Davis is going to be second on this team in targets, there is a very realistic path for him to be over 1,000 yards. 7 to 10 touchdowns in this offense is not out of the question at all. And those guys get paid on the open market. Luka, would you be in favor of the Bills kind of taking a bet now while the value is not quite at its peak, and extending Gabe Davis? Or would you just let this contract year play out and maybe hope to catch lightning in a bottle with the most motivated version of Gabe Davis?
No, I would take the latter. I don't think Gabe Davis, unfortunately for him and just everything else, he hasn't hit that baseline yet where you can feel comfortable by securing it early. The kind of situation I bring this to, it's not the same thing by any stretch of the imagination. It's not even the same sport, but it's Tage Thompson where he finally exploded with 35 goals and stuff. And you just instantly saw in a 24-year-old, it's like, hey, this guy has still more in his bag. And he just in half a season put in 30 plus goals, 30 assists. And it's like, we need to secure this before he becomes a $10+ million player. You want to take that chance. They lock him in for seven and change. And then of course he goes on and has almost 50 goals in a season, and it works. It's like that made sense because he hit a baseline. Gabe Davis, unfortunately, he still had good seasons. He just hasn't hit that number yet where it's like, if he can be that guy who hits 7-8 touchdowns, he hasn't yet shown it where he hits a base level where it's like, okay, I'm still willing to pay him $15 million a year right now to do so. It's just, if you basically are telling me right now, hey, I want to give Gabe Davis a 5-year, $15 million a year contract, I feel like most individuals would find that a little extreme and just a little bit too much for what we have gotten from Gabe Davis so far. And that's kind of the feeling I think is even in-house. And that's why you haven't seen anything yet, because he just hasn't gotten you to that comfortable place. If he had, he would have already had that contract done and dusted, because yes, they would want to pay it forward. And now understanding that if he does, as you're saying and projecting, maybe he does get 1,000 yards, 7-8 touchdowns, that's $20+ million on the open market. No questions asked. Wide receivers are getting paid left and right. And at his age, with that skill set and getting that production last on the field, he's $20+ million. And it's just, it's worth oh my goodness. Anyways, it's worth taking the risk. Just feel it out, let him be in his contract year, and just hopefully he can, because you will take that now and just deal with that repercussion in the offseason next year. You will handle that and figure it out then. If you need to go somewhere else when it comes to that position because you're just not willing to lock it up, so be it. Let that be next year's problem. Let's take that production this year and figure it out from there.
So I agree with you. I wouldn't say I strongly agree with you. I'm kind of in the middle on this one, which is nowhere where you want to be on a podcast where you should have a strong take. But I do hear what Adam's saying here too, is, if you wait it out, he could have a monster. You won't be able to afford him. I will say this. I'm with you. I think, gun to my head, I would let it play out. I get the sense the Bills are with Adam. I get the sense that if the Bills have it their way, they'll get something done before the season's done. Now, Gabe Davis could absolutely think, hey, I'm going to play this out. I'm going to make my market go up and nothing will get done. But the feeling I get is the Bills are somewhat eager to get him locked up long-term, because I don't think they view him as a disappointing player. I think they view him as one of their draft hits, and I think they want to keep him in-house for the long term. We have a packed house tonight. We appreciate you all so much choosing to spend your Friday evenings with us. One more time, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. It just helps us out so much. And there was a question in here about Kaiir Elam, and that's a good place to go next. And Joey Hatch, I think he's referencing one of the videos I put out on training camp. I heard Elam finally put it together on day 7, had a previous comment about, I heard your work. So I am putting out training camp recap videos after every practice. I will not be doing that tonight because guess what, guys? This is that video. You're here live while it's happening, but it's on our new Bills Chat YouTube channel. Please go check that out. And if you're there, send a like and subscribe there. We're trying to upload all of our content there. You're watching this on Built in Buffalo. Obviously, our stuff is going to be here as well. But yeah, so let's talk about Kaiir Elam, Luka, because this is a guy that I think coming into this offseason, the way he finished strong last year with the interception in the Dolphins game, showing elite athleticism, elite ball skills, and really just having the profile of a player that needs NFL reps. He has the NFL skills. He just needs NFL reps. It just seemed like common sense on a year where they brought back Dane Jackson on a fairly minimum deal that Kaiir Elam was going to slide into that cornerback 2 job. And so far through training camp, it's been a little bit more Dane Jackson than Kaiir Elam. Now, to Joey's point, Kaiir Elam was dynamic on Thursday. It was the Kaiir Elam show. He was dominant in one-on-ones, dominant in team drills. What I love about what's been going on with Kaiir Elam and I promise, Luka, I'm going to kick at you with a question here, but I just thought of this, is there was a period where they were doing one-on-ones, and this was a couple days ago. He lined up on Diggs, and he shut down Diggs. And Diggs was just barking about, oh, he was holding me, he was holding me, he was holding me. So they went through the rotation again. The next time Diggs came up in line, Alex Austin was lined up on Diggs. Kaiir Elam goes over, not shoves, but you get the idea, says, hey, Alex, I got this. Wanted Diggs. Now, you get what you ask for. Diggs roasted him on the next play and let him hear about it. But I love the moxie of Kaiir Elam. I love not backing down from Stephon Diggs. And I just so badly want him to be the guy. I don't want the Bills to play him because he's the number one pick. I want them to play him because he's their best option. But I also want them to empower him to make mistakes. I don't want him to play with a fear that if he bites on a double move or misses a tackle, that he's going to lose his starting job to Dane Jackson. Because in my opinion, Luka, that's just no way to grow as a football player or just a human being in general.
I'll agree with that. I was going to say, I was going to attack this until you really finish that point a little differently. But I will say, I will agree with that. I will agree that I wish they would be a little bit more empowering with how they're handling him and just him as an athlete and just letting him learn by mistakes. It's not a throw into the fire situation. Obviously, that would be more even last year to begin with. And they were more cautious with him and all rookies for that matter. But at the same time, he clearly has the mental kind of focus and drive where he wants it. He's trying to take every opportunity on, and he's trying to grasp everything he can. He's obviously, the example you brought up is perfect. He shoves Alex Austin, a 7th round pick, out of the way, and he goes, nah, I got this, big dog. And then, I mean, look, as you mentioned, you get what you get. Diggs is one of the best, if not the best, and he gets torched, but take that head on and learn from it. You can only learn from those experiences and grow on those experiences. So I do love that, and I want them to empower it. But what I will then go back to and where I wanted to attack this is I just don't want them to feel safe or just go to the safety blanket, the weighted blanket that is Dane Jackson, and just be okay with okay. Be okay with serviceable. I don't care if it's Kaiir Elam or Christian Benford. Go with something different that has an unknown ceiling to it where you might be able to get better potential. Whether it's Kaiir Elam, whether it's Christian Benford, one of these two need to be that option and at least hopefully grasp the opportunity that is cornerback 2 and just kind of excel from there. It would be incredible if it's Kaiir Elam because his athletic ceiling is, of course, higher than anyone else on this roster. So with cornerback position. So it's like, look, it would be optimal if he is that guy and he can finally figure it all out, put it together, and just excel from there. But we just need something to happen when it comes to better than Dane Jackson. And that's where really the point I always keep driving to others. And whenever I talk about this, it's like, there's nothing wrong with Kaiir Elam if he's still a serviceable corner. If Christian Benford develops into that legitimate corner opposite Trey White, that CB2 option, that's okay, because it's still something that's better than the safe okay that is Dane Jackson. Because unfortunately, Dane Jackson has mistakes in his back pocket. He's just, what you get out of him, and it's nothing high end. There has to be something else that can give you something better than that in Kaiir Elam, in Christian Benford. So figure it out with that rather than just go with the safe, reliable option that is Dane Jackson, because the reliability is just not good enough, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm with you. Dante Jenkins chiming in. What's up, guys? How was the game? You all know we've been talking about it all night. Dante, thanks for hanging out. We appreciate you. That's all we're talking about is the red and blue scrimmage. We are fired up that there is a scrimmage to talk about. If you have any specific questions about what went on tonight, not just to Dante, but any of you in chat, you want to talk about any certain topics, let us know. We'll be happy to bring that to the forefront and get into it. You mentioned something about the safe answer, and that's just so true. And on our audio podcast, Bill's Chat uploads every Monday, wherever you can find your podcasts. I stumbled into a point on Dane Jackson that I kind of like. I'm with you. I want to see Kaiir Elam or Christian Benford take the job for all the reasons you outlined. But Jordan Poyer at his press conference last week said something that stuck with me. The last time that Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, and Tre'Davious White were all on the field at the same time was Thanksgiving of 2021. And he mentioned the fact that he played on some teams in Cleveland where they were uber talented, athletic skill wise, but the trust wasn't there. And the way that he and Micah Hyde communicate with each other, they know it's an unspoken bond. I know you're going to go here, so I'm going to go here. And that trickles down to Tre'Davious White, trickles down to Taron Johnson. And it might just be as simple as Sean McDermott wants to put his most veteran group out there to start the season in the secondary. And let's just see what happens. Let's see what happens when we have all the veterans out there again. And in this case, that would be Dane Jackson. That's not a reason to do it in my mind. I'd still like to see Kyer Elam and Christian Benford get into the mix a little bit more. And I do think Kyer Elam is making a strong push for cornerback too. I really believe that. But if you want to be okay with Dane Jackson, who I think is a fine football player, but the ceiling is what concerns me. It's the trust factor. It's having 5 veteran players out there who all know each other like the back of their hand, and the trust that can go along with that. Maybe there's something to that that's just not as sexy as Kyer Elam spinning around in a playoff game and making a game-changing interception. All right, Luka, I'm going to scroll down. I don't see any. Roy Collins, my guy. I mean, I am always ready to talk about Cam Lewis.
I was waiting for you to grab this one.
I have been choo-choo leading the train on Cam Lewis because, Luka, you know how it goes in sports. One bad experience can just sour you on a player. It's why I'm not a baseball guy anymore in my life. But if you're a baseball fan, almost every fan hates their closer because they don't remember the 30 saves the closer got. They remember the one blown save on a random Tuesday night on the road that they blew a 3-run lead and like, oh, he's trash. I think Kyer Elam is so remembered for the Justin Jefferson play. And then later on in the year, he had the roughing the punter penalty against Miami, the game in the snow in Buffalo that extended the drive for Miami. They went down and got a touchdown and really made it a scary game from that point on. 2 really bad plays. Did I say Kyer Elam? I meant to say Cam Lewis.
Got it. I was about.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how I'm listening to myself and I'm like on a 30-second delay? But no, Cam Lewis, I think, is misremembered for some goof ups. But what he has become, Roy, is a 4-phase special teamer. He, in my opinion, is their best backup slot cornerback. I think Saran Neal is a get you out of a game guy if an injury happens to Taron Johnson. But if Taron Johnson misses a month, Cam Lewis is the much more preferred option at slot corner than Taron Johnson. Plus, he can back up both safety spots. I think he absolutely makes the team. I think if it came down to Cam Lewis, I'm going to say it, Luka. If it came down to Cam Lewis and Damar Hamlin, there's a big part of me that thinks, okay, I have a backup safety who checks the box at nickel and special teams and experience at all the secondary spots. I'd have a long conversation there. But in general, I think Cam Lewis is much closer to a roster lock than a roster bubble guy, because you know how these coaches think. I can only dress so many players on game day, and the more you can do for me, the more valuable you are.
You know what word I'm going to say, because it just hasn't been said enough in this episode? Versatility. It's a big, important thing on a roster. If you can do more than one thing, if you can do a couple things, if you can do a handful of things, you are just that more valuable than someone else on the roster that just can't. And potentially, the thing you said, the scenario that we may live in, where maybe it comes down to Damar Hamlin or Cam Lewis, not saying that it will, it's just if it does come down to something like that, Damar Hamlin doesn't give you that versatility like Cam Lewis does. He doesn't kind of have an extra amount of tools in his toolbox to break out if you need them in a game to kind of get you through and then figure it out from there. So, as Joey puts, your bromance here. Cam Lewis does leave a sour taste in your mouth for certain moments. And for me, I do like to kind of look past those, but it's hard for me, even with that Justin Jefferson catch and a roughing the punter call. That was just such a vital thing that, fortunately for us, that one didn't actually spoil the game itself and the result itself. But overall, I get it. It's like, look, if you are a 4-phase special teamer, if you can play that kind of nickel back role, if you can kind of put in case of emergency safety kind of situation, if Taylor Rapp and a starter is out, whatever the situation may be, you can do a lot of different things that it's like, hey, we don't want to lean on this for game after game, but if you just need him to get you out of the, end of third and fourth quarter, so be it. It's there, you have it, and you're going to be glad you have it when you need it. That's the situation with Cam Lewis, and I will accept that that's okay. And that's what makes it okay to have Cam Lewis on this roster. He is blessed to be very versatile in his usage. You're muted, Josh.
I was just wowing myself and maybe the fly in the room with some analysis here. John Osborne checking in with some Nick Broker and Richard Guriage, any sightings. So Nick Broker, the Bills' 7th round draft pick, interior offensive lineman. My understanding is he has not necessarily wowed at training camp. They tried him out Summit Center in OTAs, and that didn't go well. And they are just so deep at interior offensive line right now. When you look at the fact that one of Ryan Bates and Osiris Torrance are going to be a backup, they still like David Edwards. And I think there probably is still some belief in that building that Ike Botker can be something for them. I would like to see Nick Broker hang on the roster, but this is a tough roster to make, and I'm just not sure that there's going to be a spot for him here. Maybe this is a guy that just has practice squad written all over him. Richard Guriage is interesting. I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but I will tell you, Luka, this is the undrafted tackle out of Florida that played next to Osiris Torrance. I've heard he's had some moments in training camp, and with the lack of progression from Tommy Doyle, and with what's going on with Brandon Shell and David Quessenberry, where they're veterans, I think that they're there by default, but I don't know that they're necessarily wowing anybody. I would say Gurridge is the kind of guy that I don't think there's going to be a spot for him on the roster, but I think he could absolutely be that tackle that they want to develop and see what they can get through with him on the practice squad. I don't think there's going to be any kind of scare that another team's going to claim him and add them to their roster. I think you could easily get him on your practice squad. I think this is a very interesting name to watch next year as a guy that maybe they don't bring back a Quessenberry or Brandon Shell's on a 1-year deal. And if Spencer Brown doesn't take that leap, kind of like we saw with Tyrell Dodson a couple of years back, where all of a sudden this practice squad guy starts getting elevated and now he's an important player on the team. I think that's the path for him. I would not expect either one of these players to be on the roster, but I think that they're both accounting okay for themselves. Nick Broker probably had a chance to do better and maybe make a shot because he's a draft pick, but all in all, I would say both are on the outside looking in. Joey Hatch Jr., I heard Shane Ray is fast off the edge with burst. Luka, I have a hard time seeing Shane Ray make this roster, man. It's just, you already have Von Miller, who's going to be back at some point. Maybe he starts on PUP, which will open up a roster spot. But even without that, you have Floyd, Epinesa, Boogie Basham has been getting first team reps, which I know can be kind of an eye roll, but I don't think they're going to release Boogie Basham. They're still very high on Shaq Lawson. They're deep at defensive tackle. I think Shane Ray is probably somebody that they're going to think they can get on their practice squad as well. I don't think that they're going to have this fear that a guy that really hasn't been in the league for a couple years is all of a sudden going to be such a priority for another team that they're going to sign them to his active roster. Shane Ray to me is kind of like the John Brown from last year, where you stash him on your practice squad. If you need him on a game day, great. And it sounds like he's been having a really good camp for the expectations, but he just can't seem to get off that third team, which until you do that, it's hard to really make your mark. But I don't think Shane Ray probably has much of a chance of cracking the 53 outside of injuries.
Yeah, injuries are going to be vital for Shane Ray cracking it, in my opinion, or a move of some variety. Like I see Joey in the chat also brought up, he's hearing that they could be trading Boogie. Obviously, movement or a roster change will potentially change these thoughts. It's just, if it stands as it is, Shane Ray does feel like kind of a vet stash on the practice squad. Get him familiar with it now. If you need him down the road, if you need him at any point in time, you have him. He's somewhat familiar with everything going on. And hopefully at last second's notice, he can come in and give you some sort of production of a serviceable level. And that's okay. So that's really all it feels like with Shane Ray to me. And that's the only thing that really makes sense, especially if you are then with a healthy Von 4 deep with kind of very productive edges. If it's Von, Rousseau, Leonard Floyd, and then AJ Epinesa, I mean, it's just going to be a hard position group, that edge group, to really crack through as it is. So having someone like Shane Ray, who wasn't exactly, everyone's priority around the league, stashed on your practice squad, still has some kind of skill caliber there, that he was a high pick at some point, or high-ish pick at some point. So it's like he could be something moving forward, but I don't think the immediate is really in his future on this roster. I think that your mindset's right there. I think he's a practice squad stash. I almost bumbled that one. And kind of, if you need him last second's notice, hopefully he's not elsewhere because someone else had kind of an emergency situation, and took them off your practice squad and you can bring them in and kind of figure it out from there.
And it's important to know, like, if they're on your practice squad, yes, another team can come in and swoop them up, but they have to sign them to the active roster, and these roster spots are precious. Now, could a team like the Carolina Panthers or the Chicago Bears that maybe don't have a lot of talent in-house decide that Shane Ray has a chance to make an impact for them? Sure. But in general, those teams try to add more younger players anyway. I would think that Shane Ray would be safe on the practice squad. And John Robert brings up a good point in chat also. Boogie Basham and Shaq Lawson and Groot have all been getting snaps at defensive tackle in camp. I think that's very important, especially with some of these simulated pressures you've been seeing the Bills try to draw up under Sean McDermott. And then one last question from chat before I want to get into Tyrell Dodson and Taylor Rapp is Pete asks, any right tackles available in free agency or the trade block? Spencer Brown is not the answer. Well, Pete, my friend, if you had asked me this a week ago, I would have been pounding the table for George Fant. But he got signed this week. He is off the market. And as Luka mentioned earlier, at this point in time on August 4th, you're looking at like Eric Fisher or, 210-pound Taylor Lewan, who has a podcasting future. I don't think that, unfortunately, no. I think the well is pretty much dried up there. The best offensive lineman on the market right now is Dalton Risner from Denver. But then at the same time, if that guy being available on August 4th, there's got to be something going on. But yeah, I think the Bills probably have who they have at this point in time. There's one interesting name that I was really interested in at the beginning of free agency was Kelvin Beachum, and he went back to Arizona on a 1-year deal. And Arizona, I think, is a team that probably is eyeing next year, especially if Kyler Murray doesn't come back early with the 2 picks they have in the first round. Maybe Kelvin Beachum is a guy that if you get to October and you want to send a late round pick for him, the Cardinals would take that for a future asset for a player that's on a 1-year deal. That's the kind of move I think the Bills could pull off. But at this point in time, I think they have who they have. All right, Luka, let's talk about the middle linebacker conversation, because I think it's down to 2 names now, Tyrell Dodson and Terrell Bernard. At one point in time in camp, it seemed like Balin Spector was going to get his shot. And then just for those who don't know, Dorian Williams has not once practiced at middle linebacker, and Sean McDermott has said that he is focusing solely on practicing at weak side linebacker behind Matt Milano. They didn't want to overload him with green dot responsibilities, checks. Drinking from a fire hose was the term they used. And then also AJ Klein is a guy that I think a lot of people thought could be in the mix. He's not. He's a depth break glass in case of emergency guy. He's not in the mix. So Spector got pulled out of the rotation this week. McDermott even said he wants to see more from Dodson and Terrell Bernard. Dodson was playing primarily with the first team tonight. Terrell Bernard actually played more outside backer in place of Milano tonight. Dodson was wearing the green dot. And I will tell you, Luka, if there was a way to put money on this, I would put all my money on Tyrell Dodson being the starting middle linebacker for the Bills week 1 against the Jets.
For sure. The safe bet and just the bet that makes sense at this point in time would be Dodson doing that. When the report came out that he had the green dot today during the scrimmage, to me, that's the first check of this game of chess. Jeez. Almost fumbled that one.
What about Connect 4?
Oh, God. Oh, my Lord. Anyways, yeah, once you come out with the green dot, that definitely is a big, big step, I feel like, in a battle such as middle linebacker. And as much as someone could make the case for Bernard and stuff like that, whether it's his athleticism and stuff, it's not like anything has blown any reporter, the coaches, anything. Nothing has come out that has been eye-opening. Like even Kyer Elam in that 1 day of training camp kind of blew everyone away. And it was like, oh, there's a beast in there that hopefully can finally unleash itself. Bernard's never done that. He hasn't really kind of taken a massive jump and shown people that he really is going to fight for that. So if you have the experience with Dodson and just being in the system, having that trust of McDermott and the coaches and everything like that, and just a better understanding of the defense and how they want to attack things, why would you bet with anyone else? Why would you go with anyone else unless they kind of show an over top amount of success somewhere else, whether it comes to just being overwhelmingly more athletic than Dodson? It's just not going to happen. So unfortunately for Bernard, it just seems like it's a long shot barring injury or something unforeseen at this point in time. Dodson seems to be the guy, and he's going to be the guy moving forward. I think I watch a betting show, and this is kind of a great time to bring it up. I watch a betting show where they were going over the Bills roster because they're just going through all the NFL and just going over things and stuff. And they brought up linebackers. Are like, wait, Matt Milano's listed as a will. He stands over the middle most of the time anyways. It doesn't matter. The modern day linebacker, you're either a standing linebacker or you're an edge. There's no traditional Mike anymore. There's no traditional Will, all that, no Sam's. Like, you're a standing linebacker. You are a man at the second level at linebacker, or you are an edge linebacker. There is nothing else. It's the modern NFL. So realistically, yes, this is important because you're making, you're receiving the calls, you're making the calls, you're kind of deciding a lot of different things. But at the same time, you just need someone that's comfortable in that position. You need someone who's comfortable with the calls in to make things happen. And that's just is what it is. And that's why it makes so much sense for Dodson to be that guy over a Bernard and even a Spector, who seems to already have lost that battle.
There are just certain positions that a veteran almost is better for the appetite, and glue positions. And like Osiris Torrance could end up being the starting right guard for that team. And that's just fine because, center maybe is one of those glue positions where you prefer to have a vet if all things are equal. And we mentioned this on our audio podcast when we were talking about Rivals Watch and the Chargers off season and Eric Kendricks with the Chargers, and just how his presence on that defense, while kind of an under the radar signing, can actually be the glue that brings that entire defense together. The veteran in the huddle, the keys. I am apprehensive to think that Sean McDermott in his first year as taking over as the true defensive coordinator really wants to trust Terrell Bernard out there with the green dot. I think Terrell Bernard is going to have to outperform Tyrel Dodson, maybe even significantly, to get there. And you and I have said multiple times that Tyrel Dodson to their linebackers is what Dane Jackson is to their cornerbacks. They trust him, they like him, and they've been building him in their system. And I think there's a lot of trust there. And I think there is room to grow for Tyrel Dodson too. And I know there's been times where he's been on the field. We all understand that on Thanksgiving, AJ Klein was signed off the street and played ahead of Tyrel Dodson and Terrell Bernard. But I think there's something to be said for a guy who, in Tyrel Dodson, for the last couple of years, his mind has been in the special teams room. And then he plays when, oh, wow, Matt Milano's down. Dodson, go in. It's like, okay, great. I'm ready for this game plan. If you're the starter, you're being coached up all week as a middle linebacker, excuse me. And they're catering the defense toward your skill set. And I really do think there is a chance we can see Tyrel Dodson take a leap this year. Is he going to be Tremaine Edmonds or Roquan Smith? No, I don't think that's going to happen. If it does, great. But I think there is a very good chance that he can be an average starter. And on this defense with Rousseau, Oliver, Von Miller, Hyde, Poyer, White, Milano, he doesn't need to be Batman. Just be a solid Robin and do a good job of lining everybody else up. Do your 111th, as they say. And I think he'll be just fine. And I want to transition this conversation by saying I don't necessarily think that we're going to see an every down linebacker be the middle linebacker. We've been a little bit spoiled with Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano just being every down linebackers. There could be a situation where in some passing downs, maybe they decide to bring in a Terrell Bernard, or maybe they decide to bring in a Taylor Rapp. And that's where I want to go next, Luka, because we talk about the offensive matchups this team can create with guys like Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, James Cook. And we saw tonight when the Bills came out in 13 personnel, the defense countered by bringing in Taylor Rapp at nickel corner, a 3 safety look. Taylor Rapp is that guy on defense that can protect you against teams like the Bills who have matchup players that make you have to guess. I think Taylor Rapp has a chance to be a real unsung hero on this team. He was playing linebacker tonight. He was playing slot corner tonight. He was obviously playing safety tonight. He is a moving chess piece for this defense. I do not believe Taylor Rapp is going to need a Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer injury to see the field. I think he's a guy that's going to be very important to whatever Sean McDermott cooks up in his brain.
Are you trying to make me say versatility as much as I possibly can? Like, is that the goal tonight? Is versatility about to be the key word of the 2023 Buffalo Bills season?
You just said it 3 times. I got 2 more to hit my over.
So the funny part is the more and more Taylor Rapp is kind of being highlighted in this defense through training camp, and probably will be highlighted through all of preseason. the idea I get with him is kind of I'm trying to think of the year off the top of my head. They put the year, but if you remember Dion Buchanan with the Cardinals at one point in his career,
the Cardinals with you.
Yeah. Well, look, there's certain players that are now coming over here with Trent Sherfield. Now it's still on. Anyways, it seems like there's an idea to utilize him in a Dion Buchanan like way where he's your, as they call them, dollar linebacker. He's your slinebacker. Like you use him at safety, at nickel corner as a larger nickel corner. You use him as a linebacker if you're trying to get smaller to be more agile around the defense and the coverage. It seems like they are kind of utilizing him as the ultimate utility key and the ultimate DW, defensive weapon, if we want to call it, where he doesn't have a position. He's, he doesn't have a singular role or even kind of a flex role on the defense. He quite literally is just hey, based on the personnel we're seeing out there on the offensive side, we're going to put you at nickelback, and then we're going to put you as a third safety if we need it, or whatever the situation is. He is never a detriment if he's out there. He just gets moved around to whatever matches with whatever the offense is putting out there. That could really see an uptick in his play time, especially because it's like that kind of versatility is kind of a one of one. You do not see that a lot around the league. It's a lot of like that's another Cardinal I'm about to bring up, Isaiah Simmons, and what people hoped he could be. He just hasn't been able to work out in that way. He has the athletic ability. He just can't figure it out when it comes to the mental side of the game. Taylor Rapp is a smart enough player to figure that out clearly. There's already a trust being built that he can line up at linebacker, nickelback, safety, so on and so forth. That it's a very, very fun tool to have in your kind of holster if needed in the defensive side of the ball. And it makes me even more excited now to really see meaningful games going forward, and then what they do with him even early on, because that seems almost like something where you still want to put him in there because you like certain individuals in certain places and you want him to do certain things for you, but you also don't want to show it all to the world weeks 1 through 4 and stuff like that. That seems like something, if you can really explode it to the world in the NFL come week 16, 17, 18 going into the playoffs, and all of a sudden it becomes that X factor for you and that difference maker on the defensive side of the ball, and just kind of work it in slowly throughout the season, that could be an absolutely beautiful thing as you then also ramp up your edges with Von Miller getting more healthy and stuff like that. Like Taylor Rapp could be a legitimate X factor for this defense that we kind of saw coming, but maybe not to the extreme that it may become.
And I am not making a one-for-one comparison here because the player's name I'm going to mention is a very good player, and I'm not saying Taylor Rapp is him, but I think you could see him used a lot of the same ways that Kyle Duggar is used in New England. That kind of role where Bill Belichick basically every week says, we're going to use you this way this week because this is how the opponent looks. We have a very strong crowd tonight. I really appreciate it. Let us know if you have any more questions on Bill's training camp. We are happy to talk about it. We are just as obsessed with it as you guys are. Football is in the air. Fantasy football is in the air. I had a chance to talk to Victoria Geary last week from Football Guys about some Bills topics. And one name we brought up, obviously, was James Cook, Luka. And I think there's this belief out there in the fantasy community that James Cook, stepping into this Devin Singletary role, going to be the primary back. The offense is going to score a lot of points. Maybe James Cook has a really high ceiling fantasy-wise. One thing that could hold him back from that, though, is if they do not gain trust for him in pass blocking situations. I tweeted out from our account, Bill's Chat Pod, that Devin Singletary had 82 pass block reps last season. And between Damian Harris and James Cook only had 13. Damian Harris, I believe, was 22. Finding the person they trust in those roles is going to be extremely vital for a team that throws the ball as much as the Bills do, because as much as we want to dream about James Cook wheel routes or James Cook angle routes or one-on-one slant routes in the slot on linebackers, if you can't contribute to blitz pickup, you're not going to be on the field in those passing situations.
You can't be predictable. You can't be an individual on the field that they can absolutely hone in on and understand any part of what's going on because you're there. And that means you have to then have the ability to not run a single route and do blitz pickups or everything. If James Cook's lined up there and he is not capable of doing that at any sort of level, then obviously that probably increases your chance of blitzing because there's probably someone else lesser in to cover and everything because your halfback is running a route. Like that is a reality. And that's kind of something that you never want to admit to. You never want to kind of accept as a thing that's holding someone back because it's so it's so minor really when you think about it, because you want the big things to happen, but it's like, that's still very, very important. It's not minor in the importance category. It's vital essentially to you being able to see snaps. Like if James Cook can't do that, that's going to cut your snaps back a lot. If Damian Harris just is a better kind of individual when it comes to extra pro and just blitz pickups, that's just what it's going to be. And you're going to see a lot more of him because you need to have that ability. And it's like in a pinch, if you need then Damian Harris to run a simple swing route or something, he can do it for you. I'm imagining he's been around the league a couple of years. He can figure that one out. And then you are more trusting with him in protection. So I'm hoping he can figure that out. I'm hoping James Cook can add that to his bag and add that to the versatility that is James Cook. But overall, that's a very important thing for him to then ultimately get more snaps, get more utilized in this offense, and hopefully explode the way we want him to.
Final topic tonight, Luka. I'm going to ask you a very short and sweet question. Who's going to be the Bills' starting right guard on opening night?
Starting right guard, O'Cyrus Torrence. Mark it down in Sharpie, people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, mark it down in Sharpie. O'Cyrus Torrence is going to be the starting right guard. Everything to me, if you have a rookie that is a high-end talent like he is, that has come in and already at this point at the red and blue scrimmage is getting walked out initially with the ones, to me, he would have to do a big thing to screw it up. I think the first preseason game against the Colts will be a big moment for him if they have the ones out there at all when it comes to the offensive line. So it's either that one or I believe the second one, which is the Chicago. Is that the Chicago preseason game? I can't remember. I don't care about preseason. No. So, but anyways, if that's the one that the ones start with, then that is going to be the most important drive of his life. If he can just have a solid showing whenever that drive happens, that will become kind of the moment that he can solidify that for sure. And then me writing it down in Sharpie is the biggest flex of all time. Although I am almost certain that I am not alone in this kind of feeling when it comes to O'Cyrus Torrence, but he's going to be the guy. O'Cyrus Torrence is going to be the starting right guard. And that's awesome. By hitting a second round pick like that, where day one of his rookie season, you are comfortable enough that he's playing that right guard position, early success for that, and a great draft out the gate kind of for being with this upcoming class.
The Bills' second preseason game is August 19th at Pittsburgh. The Bears are August 26th. I think you would see the starters play that August 19th game week 2. We talked about this last year. You don't want to wait till the last preseason game, because if you happen to lose somebody that's important to your team to an injury, you want to do it early in preseason. That's an extra week of recovery built in. I'm with you. I'm not as write-it in Sharpie as you are, because I still think that they regard Ryan Bates pretty highly in that building. But the fact that O'Cyrus Torrence has been taking a little bit more first-team reps, they've been rotating, but I'd say the majority of the reps have been going to O'Cyrus Torrence. And the other point here, where I think in the case of cornerback with Dane Jackson and Kyer Elam, and I definitely think in the case of linebacker with Tyrell Dodson and Terrell Bernard, where Ty goes to the veteran, I think Ty goes to Torrance here. And it's a point I mentioned to you off the air. The versatility that Ryan Bates presents the Bills as a depth piece on the offensive line is invaluable. He came into this league as a tackle. He is their primary backup center, and he can play both guard spots. He could legitimately be a sixth man on this offensive line where no matter who goes down, he is the first one in to take that spot. And that is a great place for the Bills to be. If O'Cyrus Torrence is a backup guard, he's the primary backup at one or maybe two spots, depending on how they view David Edwards at left guard. In my mind, I'd rather see Torrance just focus on right guard, just focus on the repetitions there. Even if you see Connor McGovern go down, let David Edwards go in. I don't want to mess up Torrance's muscle memory. I want him to just focus on one position. So I think from a depth perspective, the Bills are in better shape if Ryan Bates is their backup. Now, that should not be a reason, but I think if it's close, it could factor in. And to your point, Luka, that would be a great sign for their draft class, for a team that last year, one of the major criticisms was, okay, Kyer Elam looks pretty good when he's on the field. Why is he not on the field? Okay, James Cook looks like he's clearly your most explosive running back. Why did he only get 88 carries? Okay, you drafted this kid, Terrell Bernard, in the 3rd round, and he can't even get a jersey in the playoff game when half of our defense is hurt. So I think in a lot of ways, the Bills are in need of a bounce back draft class. Not that you ever want to make decisions for optics, but optically speaking, that would be a good thing for everybody involved. I don't know if that's the best way to phrase that, but they could use a strong draft class. And it certainly seems like they're trending that way with their number 1 pick, Kincaid, and to have Torrance in there would definitely be another move in that direction.
Yeah. You want to finally have kind of I don't want to call it smashing success, but a clear success of a draft early on in its progress when it comes to Osiris Torrance and Kincaid, because the other ones have been a little bit more in slow progression with them being successful. Like the Greg Rousseau out of the gate, it was good, but it wasn't great. And that was your first one, and everything kind of trickled down from there. If all of a sudden your 2nd round pick becomes the early on premier thing, and then Kincaid then follows it up with his own premier kind of output at his own right, like your 1 and 2 being into success from week 1 on is incredible. Like the amount of kind of luck you have to have for your first 2 picks to be that successful that early is high. Like I think people look at it, and now the world that we live in when it comes to drafts, it's like this guy was rated to be this, so he should perform like this. That's a trap that a lot of us fall into all the time. And reality is, like, 1st round picks are busts a lot. Like, I'm not calling them top 10 picks are busts all the time, but it's like 1st round picks. There are plenty of 1st round picks years in, years out that just don't work out, and they're out of the league within 4 seasons. 2nd round, even more so, and so on and so forth. So if you find serviceable guys and regular starters in your 1st and 2nd round pick from day 1, that's incredible. Then all of a sudden you add in last year's draft with a Christian Benford. If he can keep putting in the work to be a regular starter himself, and you got him on your late day 3, it's like you started to figure out something with your draft process. Your talent is being rewarded when it comes to the recruiting. Geez, college mindset. Sorry, there's Pac-12 stuff on my mind that's going crazy, so I'm trying to restrict that as much as I can. Your scouting department is doing a phenomenal job, both at the collegiate level and then even kind of at the professional level, just figuring out what meshes the two. And the pro scouts are telling you what they need and stuff and what they've been keeping an eye on, and then you have found a collegiate athlete that fills that hole immediately. Like there's a lot that's going on, a lot of accolades that should be brought to the Bills' attention for finding that success when it comes to Osiris Torrance and Dalton Kincaid, hopefully. So that's a big, big thing. And then, tiebreaker kind of does go to Osiris Torrance, because then it allows more versatility to all of your depth options and ultimately gives you a better chance to succeed, even if you have to deal with injuries or certain situations going on throughout the season.
John Robert asks, will Connor McGovern start? Yes, he will. He's been taking almost all of the snaps at left guard. I know they've been working in David Edwards here and there. And a lot of times when you see guys get worked in, it's not because somebody's being benched. It's because coaches have to plan for what happens if Connor McGovern twists his ankle in the 2nd quarter against the Jets. Is David Edwards ready to go in and play next to Deion Dawkins? So, yeah, I mean, he had a rough day against Ed Oliver, Mr. August, when Ed Oliver had his explosive day, I think on Monday or Tuesday. The days are kind of running together. But yeah, Connor McGovern is locked in at left guard. I would be very, very surprised if that changes. He's been taking some reps at backup center, but that sure feels like that's going to be Ryan Bates's role if something were to happen to Mitch Morse. All right, Luka, we have a fun Madden giveaway coming up that if you want to follow us on Twitter, Bills Chat Pod, we have a tweet pinned. Is it tweet now? It's at X, and then we have a post.
It's still
pinned.
a dang tweet.
Is it still pinned? I was telling my wife earlier, now that this is me getting way off track, instead of calling it X, they should have named it Pete. Because instead of post and repost, it could be Pete and repeat.
Oh, good Lord. I'm going to put this overlay back up.
Oh, come on, guys. That was good stuff. Anyway, if you are a video game player, if you know somebody who is, and you'd like to get your hands on a copy of Madden 24 for free, Luka and I are giving away 4 copies of Madden 24. There is a post pinned to our Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, that explains very simply how you can join. And since Luka is extra generous, he has put ways in there to increase your odds of getting your name drawn by doing a couple very, very simple things. And Luka, along with the Madden giveaway, we have a fun Madden event coming up that involves you, me, and our third man, Stokes. You want to tell the folks about it?
Yeah, no, tonight I told Josh we wanted to announce it and everything like that. In addition to already having copies that we will be giving away, Josh, myself, and Stokes, a regular on this show and our podcast, we will be doing kind of what we're calling a Madden celebration. It's essentially the Monday following the Madden release, which I believe is August 21st, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern. The three of us will kind of be round robin game playing. We wanted to call it a tournament, but really it's only the three of us. So we're just celebrating and having a good time while also having anyone that wants to stop by and talk to us, whether it's Bills football, Josh Allen himself, or just Madden. I mean, feel free to be in the chat, comment, do whatever you want to do. Enjoy us kind of exploring the game, playing out some games, and just having some good old fun when it comes to conversating about everything we love. That is Bills football and Madden all in one. So yeah, that will be more information will be out about that, of course, where you can find us, everything like that. You will be able to find that on our own YouTube page at Bills Chat Pod when it comes to YouTube. But we will be putting out a tweet with information on that and everything like that. August 21st, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern. Join Josh, myself, and Stokes. We will be playing Madden to celebrate this momentous occasion that is a Bills player, and especially Josh Allen being on the cover himself.
Good stuff. And you said conversating earlier. I'm making a mental note to text my mom after this show to ask her if that's a real word or not. She's the wordsmith in our family, and it sounded right to me. And I was like, I think I've said that before, but I'm not sure if it's a real word. But I am super excited about the Madden. We're calling it the Madden celebration. Spoiler alert, Luka and I are probably not going to be the best Madden players you see this year. We're just a couple of, people that play Madden somewhat casually.
We're a few years behind from playing regularly. So, and Stokes might have a leg up on us. Just a spoiler alert.
Might. Stokes might be just a little bit better than us, but I'm very much looking forward to that. Again, we appreciate all of you hanging out with us tonight. And if you want more Bills chat in your life, we encourage you to check out Bills Chat on YouTube. We just recently started uploading all of our content to this YouTube page. We not only have our podcasts, and then we're going to put our live shows up there the next day after they air. We have videos, training camp recaps I've been doing every day after practices. Luka has a Sabres Chat podcast that comes out once a week, which is just fantastic. Keeps you up to date on the hockey team. We have some more fun stuff coming as the season goes along. If you find your way over there, if you like what you hear from us tonight, we would be thrilled if you took the time to hit that subscribe button. It is free, but it helps us out so much as we try to grow that channel. Once again, my mom says it's not a word. She chimes in. So there it is. Final answer. Conversating is not a word, Luka. So we both need to erase that from our vocabulary.
Okay. I'll still keep saying it.
Appreciate you. I'll still keep saying it too. But the exclamation point no from the mom. She has spoken. And okay. Hey,
respect.
Hey.
No, I say that respectfully.
That's
say that
my mom.
I get it.
Where was I at? YouTube. Check us out on YouTube. We have the Sabres Chat podcast, and then obviously Built in Buffalo YouTube, where you're watching this right now. We're trying to grow Built in Buffalo, and that's where you can hear from guys like Ben Shoop, who was on earlier. You can hear from Peter DiBiase, who's been out at a lot of these training camp practices. Dave Myers is back with his show. The Built in Buffalo lineup is going to be long. Stokes is going to be on Built in Buffalo. I believe he's going to be part of the pregame show. Luka and I will be here every Friday night with Bills Chat Live. Once the season starts, Luka, I really love this time slot because it allows us to take a deep dive into the Bills' upcoming opponent, which I know you and I really like, getting those matchups, trying to figure out what the keys to victory are. And then our audio podcast comes out Sunday night. So that's generally a post-game slot Monday morning. And that we can kind of break down the game. But we really enjoy that. What do we have coming up with you on Sabres Chat this week, Mr. Luka?
So last week, just real quick, I'll keep it short and sweet for anyone that's still with us. Appreciate you. Last week, I talked about the division of which the Sabres find themselves in, the Atlantic division, and kind of broke down what their offseason has looked like to this point. I'm going to just dive into the Metropolitan. It's going to be a little quicker and brief when it comes to the analysis, just because they do not play them as much. It's not as important when it comes to the sense of trying to get in one of those top three spots in the division to make the playoffs, but you still play them regularly. You still have to face them. And then you are competing with them when it comes to those wild card spots, if you find yourself in a wild card race. So just going to do a quick breakdown on the offseason that has been for the Metropolitan division and see where they all lie, as the season is only now at this point 6 weeks away from them reporting to camp. And then it is only 2 months away from from the start of meaningful hockey, just like we're still only 1 month away from meaningful football.
Buffalo sports fans, like, we have been through a lot.
Yeah.
We have been through some down times together. It's pretty good right now.
Oh,
we have a football team that is in the top 3 in odds to win the entire championship. And if you watch Sabres chat like I do, you understand that this is a Sabres team that, while they are on a playoff drought, has one of the best foundations in the sport to be competitive moving forward. So keep an eye on Sabres chat. And if you're like me and you're not a big hockey fan, but you just like to keep the pulse on the hockey team, that is a great, like, 45-minute listen every week where you just hit the high notes. You understand who the key storylines are, key players. It's a great listen. Highly recommend you check that out. If you like Luka and I, obviously you can find us on our Bills Chat YouTube, and we will be back next week in these very chairs on Bills Chat Live as we set the table for the Bills' first preseason game coming up against the Indianapolis Colts. But Luka and I will be back this coming Monday, 3 days. Why did I have to think about this, Luka? This Monday, 3 days from now. That's not impressive, folks.
That's hard.
That's bad. 3 days with our Bills Chat podcast. And we're in the middle of one of our favorite offseason series. It's called Rivals Watch. We take a deep dive into all the teams the Bills are going to be playing this upcoming season to kind of understand what their offseason was like. What's their trajectory like? What kind of a threat are they to the Bills, not only in that one individual matchup, but over the course of a season. And this week, we're going to focus on the NFC East. So the Giants, the Commanders, the Cowboys, and the Eagles. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. That'll be on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts on Monday. Plus, we will have the entire video version if you want to see our shining faces up on Bills Chat and Built In Buffalo. Luka, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, this was a longer one, but this was a lot of fun. We had something that was really meaningful to discuss with everything and then kind of really get us in the mindset, because as most people are very excited for preseason, me, not so much, but we are right there around the corner. It was fun to kind of get a little bit of taste of it, a little bit, get people in the stadium, something to discuss of that which they saw in the stadium, and then move forward from there. We have Colts, Bills next Saturday and everything like that. So when we are in these seats next week, it'll be all about that and kind of where we think they will be when it comes to that first preseason game. So exciting stuff and everything like that. Excited to get kind of back in the swing of things. Still, here we are. Next thing you know, we will be doing a pregame show on our podcast for Bills Jets Monday Night Football, and the season will be rolling.
And the best thing to come out of tonight, Luka, there were no reported injuries from the practice tonight. Keep that going, Bills. Keep the guys healthy. Again, thank you so much to everybody that chose to hang out with us tonight. We are super grateful. We know that hanging out with us is a choice, and we just can't thank you enough for making that choice. I'm going to get the point right, Luka. Give me a second to think about it. For Luka, I got it. I am Josh McCarty, and we will see you next time on Bills Chat Live.